Hey y'all, Miles at Black Widow here, and I want to go over today maybe ways you can get prepped and prepared for this upcoming fall, whether it's going out west or staying here in the east and whitetail hunting, and just how I personally prep for deer season. So we'll jump straight into bow model. Now you can hunt with any bow model, of course. My preference this year is I'm hunting with a PCH, so this is a carbon limbs. Here for Missouri whitetail, specifically southern Missouri whitetail, I like to be around the mid 40s, and that's just personal preference. I would absolutely jump into any tree stand here with 35 pounds. But this year I am shooting 46. It's 46 at 28, my draw length. I'm shooting a little bit of a shorter bow. I have a separate video on this entire bow setup that you guys can go check out, and why I did carbon and G10. But that's the bow setup I'm going with. For the arrows, I am shooting the Safari Tough Taipans. So talking about arrow setups, when I'm going into a hunting season and I'm wanting to get arrows tuned up for hunting, the things I'm going to consider is my arrow weight and my arrow length. So arrow length is going to change my point on. So if you're a point on shooter or a gap shooter, you're gonna have to consider arrow length. A shorter arrow is gonna give you a longer point on, to where shorter or longer is going to give you a shorter point on. So if I'm going out west and I know, hey, there's a good opportunity, I might have to take a 30-35 yard shot, I kind of like to tune for a shorter arrow, give myself that longer point on. But also around here in southern Missouri, hunting whitetails out of a tree stand, my average shot is usually sub 20 yards. So if I have something like a 35 yard point on and I'm trying to hunt Missouri whitetails around here, my point's going to be completely off the body of the deer, way in front of it, so I might try to adjust for that. As far as arrow weight, good rule of thumb is liking to be around 10 grains per pound. So like if I have a 46 pound bow, I'm going to want about a mid 400 grain arrows, 450, 460, 470 in there. If I was going to take this bow out elk hunting, I'd probably get around a mid 500 grain arrow. I actually have some Safari Tough Cobras tuned up for this bow that are 530 grains, and I'd absolutely would take those. A little bit heavier of an arrow, so a little bit more punch. However, here at Missouri whitetail, I went with a lighter arrow. I'm about 440 with these arrows, and that's gonna shorten up my gaps. All right, so also within the arrow setup, I'm also gonna be making sure, like right now, it's mid-August. Our season here in Missouri opens up in a month, middle of September. Some states are, the 1st of October. But regardless, this is about the time of year I'm gonna start practicing how I'm going to hunt. So I've got my lighted Nocks in because I'm gonna hunt with lighted Nocks. So I'm gonna go ahead and throw those in. Most of the time these lighted Nocks, they're gonna be heavier. So I wanna put those in and make sure my arrow flight's not changing any, making sure my tune's still good. So I'm gonna be practicing with these lighted Nocks. I'm also gonna always have at least one broadhead already in, so I can shoot a broadhead, make sure, it's not gonna change my tune. My arrows are still flying good with that broadhead I choose to use. Now, broadhead selection is a total other beast in its own. Everyone's got their personal preference. In my opinion, I believe if you have a good sharp broadhead, cut on contact, if you can shoot this arrow where it needs to go, it doesn't take as much bow weight as some may think to get good penetration. So I like a solid, usually, a solid head broadhead, like the VPAs or something, for around here in Missouri, because where we're at, this is rock country. Even if you hit a deer, you're gonna hit a rock on the other side. So I go through breaking a lot of broadheads. I like those wiki broadheads, the VPAs, the Stingers, Iron Wheels, anything like that. So broadhead selection is really personal preference between 2-blade and 3-blade. Me personally, if I'm shooting a heavier bow, 50 plus pounds, I'm gonna shoot a 3-blade broadhead because I know I'm getting enough force for penetration. If I'm shooting a lighter bow, I might step down to a 2-blade broadhead just to help with penetration a little bit and less drag. And I've had a lot of good luck with that. Or some have the 2 blades with bleeders, like the Magnus Stingers. They have the bleeders and stuff. I'm a big fan of having bleeder blades, on a broadhead for sure. I'm also going to be making sure that my tab or my glove that I'm using is good to go, and then I have a backup. So I usually have a tab that I'll shoot after deer season, shoot it all spring and stuff, make sure it gets real broke in, and then I'll have that either like in my bino harness or in my pack, so that I've always got an extra. say I walk to my tree stand, I realize I forgot this one in the truck, or it fell off between the truck and the tree stand, I've got a backup with me and it's good to go. So yeah, I've always got a backup tab, making sure those are ready to go, and one that's broke in, not one that's brand new and it's all stiff. It's going to be one that's broke in. That's going to be the same thing with my bowstring. So normally about July, I'm going to put on a new bowstring. The bowstring I was shooting, I'm going to put in my trad kit that we'll get into. So that way, if something crazy were to happen, I slip and fall and break my string, I have an already pre-stretched, shot up string that I can put on here, adjust to my brace height, and I'm good to go. My knocking points and everything's already set. So things like that, I'm making sure I have. Also, like if I'm shooting a clicker, I'm gonna make sure that clicker is silenced. Now with these new clickers, there's actually no sound to them. You feel the report in the string. So there will be another video coming out on these. We're super excited to start offering these, so we'll get into that later. I'm also making sure you know, everything on this bow is good as far as like my spring egress is where it needs to be. My spring's not too wore out. Making sure all that's good. So that's kind of how I'm prepping the bow itself, my bow, my arrows set up, and getting ready to go. What I'm also going to start doing, like I'm shooting the lighted Nocks, I'm starting to practice how I'm going to hunt, is also going to be like shooting with my bino harness on. So I'm going to start shooting a lot. About every time I go out shoot, I'm going to have my bino harness on, because I never go to a tree stand without this. I've always got my binos on when I'm in a tree stand, so that's how I'm going to be shooting at an animal. So that's how I need to start practicing, making sure that there's no loose straps that could get caught up in the string, or anything that could somehow affect that string travel as I release and it travels down to the bow. So I'm going to start shooting with this thing on and making sure it's all good to go. Also, when I'm starting to prep for upcoming deer season, is I'm starting to think about what gear am I going to take to a tree stand, and also having that ready as well. So that can be something from going with just like this hip pack here to, you know, a bigger pack like that Kafaru pack there. It all depends what I'm going to take in. If I'm taking a tree arm and my camera system and everything to film, I'm usually going to take that bigger pack just to fit everything. I can slide my camera arm down in it, my camera, maybe an extra set of lens, you know, mics, anything like that. I'm going to have that bigger pack. So I'm going to have that pack all rigged up, ready to go, to where I can just throw my gear in and go. I'm not having to attach new things because I've got, you know, more stuff I want to carry. I'm going to lay out everything that I could possibly be taking, and that's going to include, you know, maybe an extra jacket or something, you know, when it starts getting into that time of year where, you know, that extra jacket is needed. But maybe I've got a long walk to my tree stand and I don't want to initially put that jacket on the walk. Making sure I have either enough room or extra straps to be able to strap that on and go. So I'm trying to think ahead of something like that. Even something like this, which I love taking. This is a very minimalist, Spartan way to go to a tree stand. You're not packing in a lot of weight, but yet this thing can hold everything I need it to hold. And everything that is in here, if I take that pack, it goes from here to in there. So with this pack, things I have in here are like this trad kit that we talked about earlier. I'm gonna have, you know, of course, my grunt tube. I've got a saw. So if I get somewhere, maybe I'm hunting in a stand that I haven't hunted in yet this year, I can make sure if I missed any branches, I can clear those up. So I've got an extra saw, usually a set of shears or something in there, and, you know, maybe snacks and a water bottle too. Now, what's awesome about this is I don't need to take in an extra gear hook like I'd have with that bag to be able to hang it. I can actually wrap this around the tree and clip it. This waist belt extends fairly large, so I can get it around a tree, clip it, and now this thing is just hanging on the tree with me. It's also got vertical straps that come with it that you can run from here to there, and I've actually had, you know, branches stick out like this, and I can actually strap this to that branch and it stay like this, and nothing's gonna fall out. Also, if I need to roll up a tripod, I can fit a small camera arm on this or an extra puffy jacket. I can still strap that onto this waist pack, put it on, and go. So I'm making sure everything I need for this is ready to go and all that. So getting into this trad kit, so having a trad kit is always a good idea of having a backup of anything. you want to plan for the worst and hope for the best. So I always have this trad kit with me. This goes in any pack. This go in this hip pack, the big pack, or even my pocket. If I'm just wanting to maybe just walk around the woods, maybe do a little stump shooting or something, and see what I might come across. Maybe I'm looking for a new spot for a tree stand or something. I'm usually always going to have this trad kit with me. So with this trad kit, I'm going to have things like the extra string, the string that I've been shooting all spring that's already pre-stretched. The nocking points are ready to go, silencers and everything. All that is going to be ready to go. I'm going to have things like usually extra bolts and a hex key. So if I did need to maybe unstring or take my bow apart, I can do that. I have that option here. I've also got things like a small Gerber, which is just good to have on you for anything, whether it's for the bow or for a pack or anything. You usually have a small Gerber on there. I've also got a bow stringer to where if I do need to restring the bow or de-string the bow, I have a bow stringer with me, and always a backup bow hoist. I usually always carry an extra bow hoist like in the front of this or in the front of that, just so if I get to a tree stand and realize, I didn't set a bow hoist on it when I initially set the tree stand up, I've got an extra bow hoist that I can hook onto the bow, hook onto myself, climb up to my tree stand, and then pull my bow up so I can get into the tree stand hands free, which is always the best way to do it, and then I can pull my bow up with me from there. So those are just kind of things that I'm thinking of getting ready for upcoming season like that. I'm also making sure things like my safety belt and my harness and all that, those are all good to go. I don't need to replace any straps on those or anything. Making sure that's all good to go, and things like rattling horns and scent spray, anything like that is also ready to go and ready to attach to those packs. So that's kind of things I take in as a trad bow hunter, and it's also going to be, I usually take an extra bow arm. Usually when I set a tree stand, I'll leave a bow arm in with that tree stand, but I usually always have an extra two. Say I get somewhere and I forgot a gear hook, I can hang my pack and my bow at the same time. So I'm a big fan of these easy hangers that get the bow way out and around from the tree. I like having it set up to where if I know the deer's most likely avenue of approach, I've kind of got my bow already hanging in that direction to where it's a very little movement from going off the hanger to where I actually need to be set up to be. So things like that, and it also can go down into where I'm setting a tree stand for a trad bow. If I know I'm trying to limit my distance, I want that sub 20 yard shot because I'm limited with my range with a recurve compared to like a compound. So tree stand placement becomes very, very important. So I'm going to start thinking of things as how those deer are traveling, what terrain features they're going to be using to come in, where the wind needs to be, what's behind me, making sure I have the tree behind me and I'm not sticking off, I'm being silhouetted in a bright sky. Making sure things like that are set up to where I have the best chances I can have at anything that comes in. So stand placement, we could deep dive real deep into that and stuff with a trad bow, but I'm going to be thinking about that. I'm also going to be adjusting straps on any tree stands that maybe I left out through the year. So I'm going to go before season, I'm going to go around, check them all, make sure none of those need tightened up or maybe just replaced in general. So making sure my tree stands are ready to go, and if any new ones need hung, I'm really putting in the thought process of where I can hang a tree stand to where I can have the closest and best opportunity at an animal that comes in. All right, so another way I'm going to start getting prepped for deer season is choosing if I'm going to hunt with or without a quiver attached to the bow. So a lot of times if guys are 3D shooting, they're carrying either a back quiver or hip quiver for their arrows. However, when it comes to shooting a quiver on the bow, it can change how things feel and how things shoot. So I recommend, like, if you're going to hunt with a quiver on your bow, make sure you're tuning your bow with a quiver full of arrows. And I'm gonna go ahead and choose what quiver I'm gonna be running. This is a Great Northern side mount that I've got on right now, so I'm constantly shooting this bow with this quiver on and full of arrows. All right, so another really awesome piece of gear to have for hunting in general, tree stand hunting, ground blind, is this arrow Kwik-Lock. So what this does is this is actually going to hold onto your arrow, and it's going to hold it on your shelf when it's just hanging from a bow hook, so your arrow can't fall off, you know, in the wind, and then all of a sudden it's down on the ground. You got to put a new arrow in. So this holds your arrow, and then as you draw, it'll come back and it'll release your arrow. So I'm gonna go over installing one of these, especially if you're a tree stand hunter. I think these are like nearly a must. Like these are a game changer for sure. So to install these is super easy. First thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take some like denatured alcohol or some acetone here, and I'm gonna clean off the surface that this is gonna go on. So this is gonna go right here on the back side of the shelf. So I'm gonna clean this all around. It's actually gonna hook around that springy rest insert. So I'll just make sure that's clean, and I'm gonna let that dry. Now when it comes to the arrow Kwik-Lock itself, I do a few minor adjustments to it. So this will end up sticking on just like this. So it'll look like that. However, with our riser designs, sometimes these, let's just call it earpieces on this, kind of don't want to stay down because of the curvature of our riser. So what I'll do is I'll take a pair of scissors and I'll just fold this back, and you can see these two, like I said, earpieces, we'll call them, and I'll actually cut those off. So I'll take scissors here, cut both of those. All right, now you can see I've cut those two earpieces off, so now it's good to go. Now installing these, super easy. All you're gonna do is take an arrow and knock it. All right, so I got my arrow knocked. I'm gonna take this arrow Kwik-Lock and I'm actually going to put it on the arrow. So now you can see it is just hanging off the arrow. These do come with 2 rubber grippers. So if you're shooting something like these Taipans or a 204 shaft, or maybe you're shooting a micro diameter shaft, these are rated to fit the 244 shafts out. So if you're shooting a smaller shaft, you just take one of these rubber gripper bands and literally just put it on over one of those. Like I said, you could put one on both if you're shooting the micros. Usually just one of them is really good for these 204 shafts. So again, with my arrow knocked, I'm going to stick that on just like that. So now that's on. Now I'm gonna push this all the way up to the riser. So from right here up to the riser. Now this just, it's an adhesive backing, so I'm just gonna peel that off. Now I'm just gonna fold that over to go around that springy rest right there, and then just push it down. So once that's on there, you can now see it's holding that arrow. So the wind can blow or anything, that's not gonna come off, whether I'm shooting a springy rest or off the shelf. That's gonna hold on, and then as I draw back, it's just gonna let go of it. So it's a very light hold, but it's also enough like you can draw and it's not gonna pull your nock off your string. So I can pull and it's just gonna let go as I draw. So once you get in a tree stand, pop that on, hang it, now you got nothing else to worry about. So guys, those are just some ways that I am prepping for deer season with a traditional bow. If you guys got any questions, leave it in the comments. Let us know what you guys want to see next. And until then, good luck this fall.